Dear beloved, we want to let you know that your willing decision to be part of this growing community is recognized as a true act of love, a beautiful choice to support individuals as they share their life journeys, experiences, and testimonies. Be rest assured that here, you will find real-life testimonies that can inspire transformation, strengthen your faith, and encourage you in times of need. We also kindly ask that you engage with our videos, like, comment, and share, as your interaction helps this community of believers continue to grow and reach others with God's love. God bless you richly. I was 7 when the world around me became a sound I could no longer bear. It was the sound of shouting, fire, and crying, all happening at once. Our small village was in the valley, surrounded by sand and dry trees. That morning, I had been playing with my little brother outside our tent, making shapes in the dust. Then we heard engines coming fast. I thought maybe travelers were arriving. But when I saw my mother's face change, I knew it was something else, something terrible. Men I didn't know came riding on trucks, shouting words I didn't understand. They wore black and carried guns that shined in the sun. People began to run. I froze. My mother grabbed me and pulled me toward the tents behind us. We hid, but there were screams everywhere. I remember the smell of smoke and the loud sound that made my ears ring. When it all stopped, I couldn't find my father or my brother. Only my mother and I made it out that day. We ran for a long time, through sand and wind, until my feet bled. When we reached the camp, there were so many people, some crying, some silent, some just staring at nothing. I wanted to ask for my father, but when I opened my mouth, no sound came. It was as if my voice had been left behind in the fire. From that day on, I didn't speak a word. Not because I didn't want to, but because something inside me felt locked, like my words were trapped in a deep, dark room I couldn't open. At night, I used to dream about angels. They didn't have faces I could describe, but I knew they were bright and kind. They came near when I cried. Sometimes, I'd wake up and feel warmth near me, like someone had placed a blanket of light over my heart. My mother said maybe God sent them to comfort me. But I wasn't sure if God could still see me after what happened. During the days, I started to draw what I saw in my dreams. I'd take pieces of charcoal and sketch on old cardboard. Angels with wings that stretched across the sky. Children sitting under light. A place that looked like peace, something I couldn't find around me. Drawing became my voice. Every line I made felt like a whisper that only heaven could hear. Sometimes the other children would gather around and watch me draw. They'd ask questions, but I'd just smile. They didn't know that my drawings came from somewhere real, a place I felt more alive than in this broken world. My mother would look at my drawings and weep quietly. She said she could see hope in them. But I wasn't sure what hope looked like anymore. I only knew that when I drew, the pain in my chest became softer, almost like someone was listening to my silence. Nights in the camp were always the same, cold, silent, and filled with whispers of people who couldn't sleep. Sometimes the wind blew hard against the tents, making them flap like they were alive. I would lie close to my mother, feeling her heartbeat through the thin blanket. I never spoke, but she always talked to me as if I could answer. She would tell me stories about when we lived in the valley, how my father used to wake us early to pray, how my brother would chase goats and laugh until he fell in the dust. I missed those sounds. The camp was too quiet, except for the crying of babies and the distant hum of generators. One night, when I couldn't sleep, I saw a light outside our tent. It wasn't like firelight or the lamps people used. It was soft, like moonlight that had come close to the ground. I got up quietly and stepped out. The light didn't hurt my eyes. It felt warm and gentle. In that glow, I saw shapes, like people but brighter, standing still, watching me. I wasn't afraid. Somehow, I knew they were the same ones from my dreams. They didn't speak with voices, but I could feel words inside my heart. It was like they were telling me that I was not forgotten. They let me know that even though I couldn't speak, heaven could still hear me. I felt something heavy lift from inside me, like someone took the pain and held it for a while so I could breathe again. Then one of them reached out, and I saw light pass from his hand to my chest. It didn't burn. It just felt full, like my heart had been empty and was being filled again. When I woke up, I found my old piece of cardboard and drew what I had seen. I drew the bright figures standing under a soft light. I drew a little girl standing before them, her hands open, with tears on her face. The other children came and said it looked beautiful, but to me it was more than beautiful, it was real. Every time I looked at it, I felt peace. After that, the angels came more often, not always in light, but sometimes in dreams. They would show me pictures, children playing by rivers, people smiling under trees, a world without pain. Once, they revealed to me a tall man with kind eyes standing by a gate that shined like gold. He didn't say his name, but I somehow knew who he was. His presence made everything around me feel alive. He let me know that God still sees every tear and that no prayer, even the silent ones, goes unheard. In the mornings, I drew what I saw. Each picture felt like a story heaven wanted to tell through me. People in the camp began to gather around to see my drawings. Some cried when they looked. Others touched them softly, like the paper was holy. But I didn't understand why until much later, when strangers came to visit and everything changed. It was late in the afternoon when the strangers arrived. The camp was quiet that day because the heat was heavy, and most people stayed inside their tents. I was sitting on the ground outside ours, drawing again. This time, I was trying to sketch the golden gate I had seen in my dream. The sunlight made everything look dusty and still, but then I noticed a group of people walking toward us. They looked different, their clothes were cleaner, and their faces carried a peace I hadn't seen in a long time. They were missionaries. They came with boxes of food, books, and something that felt invisible but strong, hope. The children ran first to meet them, and soon the whole camp came alive with excitement. My mother smiled for the first time in many weeks. One of the men knelt down to talk to me, but I just looked up and nodded. I still couldn't speak, and I wasn't sure if I wanted to. He smiled gently and didn't force me. Instead, he looked at the drawings beside me. His eyes stopped on one, the picture of the shining figures standing before a little girl. He became very quiet. His hands trembled as he picked it up carefully, like it was something sacred. Then he looked at me again, his eyes full of tears. I didn't understand why. My mother came closer, worried something was wrong, but the man just shook his head slowly. He seemed overwhelmed. After a moment, he asked if I could show him more drawings. I nodded and brought out the small bundle I kept tied in a cloth. Pictures of angels, gates, rivers, and children smiling in light. The man studied each one as if they were answers to questions he had been asking for years. Finally, he sat down on the sand, staring at one drawing of an angel with open hands and a wound in the wrist that shone like light. The other missionaries gathered around him, whispering. My mother asked what was happening, but they were too moved to speak at first. Then, through tears, the man told her something that made everyone fall silent. He revealed that years before, during a time of sickness and loss in his own country, he had a vision while praying. A vision of angels, a bright gate, and a silent child standing before them, weeping but shining. The same scene that I had drawn. He said he had carried that vision in his heart for years, not knowing what it meant. And now, here in this forgotten camp, he was seeing it again, not in a dream, but in my drawings. If you haven't subscribed yet, now is the perfect time. We'd be honored to have you join this growing community of seekers and truth lovers. As you listen to this powerful testimony of transformation, we'd love for you to be part of the conversation. Share where you're watching from and what stands out to you in this journey. Your thoughts and reflections aren't just comments. They help shape a genuine dialogue around experiences that have the power to change lives. My mother began to cry. The man's wife came and knelt beside her, holding her hand. I didn't cry, not yet. I just looked at them all, wondering how something I drew from my dreams could mean so much to someone else. I didn't understand everything, but deep inside, I felt a quiet warmth. It was the same warmth that came the first time the angels appeared. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about what the man said, that God had shown him my drawings long before we ever met. I didn't know what that meant, but I started to feel something I hadn't felt since before my voice was lost. A small, fragile feeling called hope. The next morning, the missionaries returned. This time, the man brought a small notebook with him, its pages filled with sketches and words. He showed it to my mother first, then slowly placed it before me. As I turned the pages, my heart began to beat fast. His drawings looked like mine. The same river, the same light, the same angels standing before the gate. Even the child with tears on her face looked just like the one I drew, except his was made years ago. He explained gently that after his vision, he had drawn everything he remembered, but no one ever believed him. He said that what I drew was a confirmation, proof that God was speaking, not through voices this time, but through pictures and pain. He told my mother that my drawings were not ordinary. They were messages of comfort, a sign that heaven still speaks to the brokenhearted, even through a silent child. While he spoke, I felt something inside me stir, like a breeze passing through my soul. I couldn't explain it, but I felt seen, not just by him, but by someone greater. My mother began to cry softly again, her hands shaking as she touched my hair. The man's wife knelt beside me and said that the angels in my drawings looked exactly like the ones her husband described years ago when he first saw heaven. I looked at her, and though I couldn't speak, my eyes told her what my heart was saying, that I didn't imagine them, I truly saw them. Later that day, the man asked if he could pray with us. The people in the camp gathered around, curious. We sat in a circle on the sand. When he closed his eyes, I felt peace spread through the air, like wind moving through tall grass. He began to thank God for the silent ones, for those whose tears speak louder than words. He said that sometimes heaven sends its messages not in thunder or great miracles, but in the quiet weeping of those who still believe even when they cannot speak. As he prayed, I felt warmth again, stronger than before. I saw a bright shape standing behind him. It was the same light that had visited me before, but now it felt closer, clearer. I couldn't see his face, but his presence filled me with calm. He let me know that my silence was not a curse but a language heaven understood. He revealed to me that tears can speak faith when words are gone, that every tear I cried had reached him. I opened my eyes, and though I still couldn't speak, my body began to tremble. The man stopped praying and looked at me. He didn't look surprised, more like he knew what was happening. My mother held me close, whispering comfort, but I wasn't afraid. For the first time since the day of the attack, I felt light spreading through the darkness that had lived inside me. When the prayer ended, the man told everyone that God had chosen to show his comfort through the least expected, through a little girl who had no voice but carried heaven's messages in her hands. That night, people came to our tent, asking to see my drawings again. They said they felt peace just looking at them. My mother began to smile more often. And even though I still couldn't speak, I felt something beginning to heal, quietly, like dawn breaking after a long night. A few days passed after the missionaries came, and something began to change in the camp. It was slow at first, like a wind that you only feel when it brushes your skin. People who used to argue over food began sharing it. Children who had stopped playing started laughing again. Even the men who rarely spoke to anyone sat together in the evenings, praying softly. My mother said the camp felt lighter, as if some heavy cloud had lifted. The man and his team continued visiting every day. They taught songs about hope, about a God who still listens, and about light that never goes out. I couldn't sing, but I always sat near them and watched. Sometimes I drew while they sang, and when I did, I could almost feel the music in my hands. My drawings became brighter, more colors, more smiles, more life. People started saying that when they looked at my pictures, they felt peace, even without understanding why. One morning, while everyone was gathered for prayer, I felt a strange feeling again, like someone was calling me, not with words, but deep inside. I turned around and saw the same bright presence I had seen before. The light was so gentle, yet so strong that it filled my heart completely. I didn't see a face, but I knew who it was. The same one who had comforted me in my dreams. He let me know that I should not be afraid anymore. He revealed to me that my silence had a purpose, that through it, others would learn to listen, not just with their ears but with their hearts. As the light faded, I began to cry. My tears fell silently on the sand, but this time, they didn't feel like pain, they felt like worship. The man saw me crying and came over, placing his hand lightly on my shoulder. He didn't ask questions. He just prayed quietly. Then something unexpected happened. People around began to cry too. It was as if one tear had called another, until the whole gathering was weeping. But these weren't tears of sadness. They were tears that washed away fear. That day became known as the Day of Tears. The missionaries said they had never seen anything like it. It was as though heaven had opened and touched every heart in the camp. Even people who said they didn't believe in God found themselves on their knees. My mother said that through my silence, God had spoken louder than any preacher ever could. Later, when the camp grew quiet again, I sat by myself, holding one of my drawings, the one of the shining gate. I thought about my father and brother, about everything we lost. But for the first time, the thought didn't make me feel empty. Deep inside, I knew they were in a place where pain couldn't reach them. The light had let me know that one day, we would all meet again. Not in a camp, not in fear, but in peace. From that day on, people didn't call me the silent girl anymore. They called me the girl who saw heaven. I didn't think I was special. I was just someone God chose to use when I had nothing left but tears and faith. And somehow, that was enough. Weeks passed, and life in the camp began to find a strange kind of rhythm. The missionaries had become like family. They brought food, stories, and songs. Every evening, the man would sit with me and ask if I had drawn anything new. I always had. My pictures had changed again. No more shadows or broken tents. Now I drew sunlight, children holding hands, and people standing under waterfalls of light. My mother said she could see healing in every picture I made. One evening, something happened that no one expected. The missionaries had gathered everyone for prayer. The sun was setting, and the air smelled of smoke and dust. I was sitting beside my mother, holding my small sketchbook, when I felt that same gentle presence again, close, warm, and powerful. It wasn't just near me this time, it was around everyone. Some began to cry, others raised their hands in silence. I closed my eyes and felt something move inside me, like a door being opened after years of being locked. I felt the light enter that dark place in me where my voice had been lost. I didn't hear words, but I knew exactly what was being said. He let me know that the time of silence had ended. He revealed that my tears had already spoken everything I needed to say, and now it was time to speak with my mouth again, not for myself, but for others who had lost their own voices. I opened my eyes, trembling. My mother noticed and touched my face, asking softly if I was okay. I wanted to nod, but before I could, a sound came out, small, broken, but real. Her eyes widened. Everyone turned toward me. My lips moved again, and I whispered the only word that filled my heart, Jesus. The whole camp went silent. Even the wind seemed to stop. My mother fell to her knees, crying and laughing at the same time. The missionary man looked like he was seeing a miracle. He whispered, "Thank you, Lord," with tears running down his face. I didn't understand how it happened, I just knew I could speak again. But the voice that came out wasn't the same one I had before. It felt softer, calmer, full of peace. I spoke slowly, and it felt like every word carried meaning that didn't come from me alone. I looked at the people around me, those who had cried, those who had lost everything, and I said, "He hears even when we can't speak. He remembers us." The sound of weeping filled the air again. The missionary man said later that he had prayed for years to witness one miracle that would prove God was still near, and that day he saw it. I didn't know what to say to that. I was just thankful that my first word was his name. That night, I lay under the stars beside my mother, and for the first time in a long time, I whispered a prayer aloud. It was short, but it was everything in my heart. Thank you for hearing me when I had no voice. I fell asleep feeling lighter than ever, as if my soul had learned to sing again. After I spoke that day, everyone began to look at me differently, not with fear or pity anymore, but with wonder. The next morning, people came to our tent one after another, asking me to draw for them. Some brought pieces of cardboard, others brought scraps of paper or even pieces of old cloth. They said my drawings gave them peace. Some said that when they looked at them, they felt something move in their hearts, something they couldn't explain. At first, I didn't understand why it mattered so much. I was just drawing what I saw in my dreams. But when I prayed, the same gentle presence came again and let me know that my drawings were not just pictures, they were messages. Each one was meant for someone who needed to be reminded that God still sees them. He revealed that the light and angels I saw were not only for me, they were signs that heaven was still near, even in the middle of the pain. So, I began to draw carefully, listening inside my heart each time I started. Sometimes, I'd feel a strong warmth while drawing certain people or places, and I would know that the picture was meant for someone specific. I gave one drawing to a mother who had lost her baby. It showed a child smiling under a bright tree beside a river. She held it to her chest and cried for a long time. Then she smiled and said that for the first time since her loss, she felt peace. Another time, I drew a man kneeling under light, and when I showed it to one of the older men in the camp, he began to shake. He said that the night before, he had dreamed of the exact same thing and had prayed for a sign that God still forgave him. He told me that my drawing was the answer. I didn't know what to say, I only knew that the same love that comforted me was now reaching others through my hands. The missionary man helped me gather all the drawings and keep them safe in a big folder. He said one day, people would need to see them, not as art, but as testimony. He told me that my life was proof that God could speak through silence, through pain, and through even a little child. His words stayed in my heart for days. I started to understand something new, that sometimes, when the world takes away everything you have, God gives you something invisible but powerful, purpose. In the evenings, I still sat quietly by the fire, drawing as the camp settled down. I no longer felt like a broken child. I felt like a messenger, not because I was special, but because heaven had trusted me to carry light in my small hands. Each picture felt like a prayer, one that had no sound but carried hope far beyond the camp. And every time I finished a drawing, I whispered the same words under my breath. Let this reach the one who needs it most. One evening, the sky grew dark earlier than usual. The air felt heavy, and the wind carried a strange sound, like distant thunder mixed with crying. My mother said a storm was coming, but this one felt different. The missionaries helped everyone secure the tents and gather children inside. The clouds turned black, and soon lightning began to flash across the sky. The camp grew tense. Some people prayed, others hid. As the storm raged, I sat near the entrance of our tent, holding my sketchbook close. Every flash of lightning lit the faces of the people, tired, frightened, clinging to one another. I wanted to draw, but my hands were shaking too much. My mother held me close, whispering prayers. The thunder roared so loud that I could feel it in my chest. Then suddenly, in the middle of that noise, I saw something that made everything else disappear. Through the opening of the tent, I saw light, not from the lightning but from above, pure and steady. It didn't flash or fade. It stood still, bright and calm, right over the camp. My mother didn't see it, but I did. And in that light I saw them again, the angels. This time they weren't far away. They were standing above the tents, their light spreading across the whole camp like a covering. It was as if heaven had opened its roof above us. My heart pounded, but I felt no fear. The same presence that had visited me before now filled the air. I heard no voice, but I understood what was being revealed. He let me know that the storm outside could not destroy what God had already protected. He made me understand that this light was his promise, that no matter how fierce the darkness became, his presence would always stand over his people. The storm grew stronger, tearing at the tents. People screamed as the wind howled and sand filled the air. But I couldn't look away from the light. I felt peace so deep that I began to cry again, quietly, not from fear but from awe. The man and his team came running from tent to tent, checking if everyone was safe. When they reached ours, he saw my face glowing with tears. He asked what I was seeing, but before my mother could answer, the thunder suddenly stopped. Just like that, silence. Everyone came out of their tents, looking around in shock. The clouds began to part, and right above us, in the open sky, a single beam of light remained. It stretched across the camp like a pillar. The missionary fell to his knees, crying. People began to pray and sing, thanking God for saving us. I stood there, watching the light fade slowly until it disappeared into the stars. After the storm, no tent was destroyed. No one was hurt. Even the animals were safe. My mother said it was a miracle. The missionary said God had placed a shield over us that night. But I knew deep inside that heaven had stood guard, the same angels I had drawn, the same light I had seen. That night I drew again, a picture of the storm with a pillar of light above it. And under the light, small figures of people kneeling in peace. I didn't write any words on that picture, but I knew its name, God's shelter. After the storm, everything in the camp seemed to glow with new life. The air felt lighter, and people walked around smiling. It wasn't just because the storm had passed, it was something deeper. It felt like the fear that used to live in everyone's eyes had finally left. I could sense peace where there used to be sorrow. The missionaries said they would soon leave to help another camp. When I heard that, my heart grew heavy. They had become like family, and I didn't know what it would feel like when they were gone. The man noticed my sadness and told me that even though they were leaving, the God who comforted me would never leave. He said the same spirit that spoke through my tears would keep guiding me, even when I grew older. That night, I couldn't sleep again. The stars were clear and close, and the camp was quiet except for the sound of the wind brushing the tents. I held my sketchbook close and prayed softly, asking God to keep the missionaries safe and to never let me forget everything He had shown me. Then, slowly, I drifted into sleep, and once again, I found myself standing in the same place I had seen many times before. It was the Valley of Light. The ground was soft and shining, and I could hear gentle music, like water flowing. The air felt alive. I saw the same gate again, tall, golden, and beautiful. And in front of it I saw the angels, just as before. But this time, the man who had prayed in the camp was there too, standing beside them. He looked peaceful and smiled at me. I wanted to speak, but before I could, the light surrounded me again, and I felt that same voice, not in my ears, but in my heart. He let me know that every tear ever shed in faith is like a seed planted in heaven, and one day it will grow into joy. He revealed that the pain of this world is not forever, that every child, every mother, every broken person who still believes, even through silence, will one day see that same light and be home. I felt warmth all over me, and then I saw something that made me cry again, but this time, from joy. I saw my father and my brothers standing beyond the gate. They were smiling. They didn't look hurt or tired. They were whole, bright, and peaceful. My father raised his hand as if to say, "Don't cry, we are safe." I reached out my hand, but the same voice told me that it wasn't time yet. He let me know that I still had work to do, that the world still needed to hear through my drawings, through my life, that He is real, that He is love, and that He still speaks. When I opened my eyes, it was morning. My pillow was wet from tears, but my heart felt light, like something heavy had finally lifted forever. My mother was still asleep beside me, so I quietly reached for my pencil and began to draw again. This time, I drew the Valley of Light, the gate, the angels, and my father smiling behind it. It was the most beautiful picture I had ever made. When the missionary came to say goodbye later that day, I gave it to him. He looked at it and began to weep softly. Then he said, "This is what heaven looks like through the eyes of a child." He promised to keep it safe and share it wherever he went, so people would know that God still comforts, still speaks, and still saves. It has been many seasons since that time in the camp. I am older now, though sometimes when I look at my drawings, I still feel like that little girl who spoke through tears. My voice has grown stronger, but I have learned that words are not the only way to speak. God taught me that sometimes the greatest messages come from the quiet places, from broken hearts that still choose to believe. I still draw. My drawings have traveled farther than I ever could. Some are in churches, some in small homes, some in countries I've never seen. The man who once visited our camp keeps sending letters, telling me how people weep when they look at them, not from sadness, but from hope. He says many find faith again after seeing them. Each time I hear that, I remember how everything began. A small girl with no voice, crying in the desert, who heaven chose to use. When I look back now, I understand that my silence was not a punishment, it was preparation. God allowed me to feel what many people feel but never say, fear, loss, and loneliness. But He also showed me what comes after, peace, light, and healing. I learned that pain can either bury you or bloom something beautiful in you if you let God touch it. I want anyone who hears my story to remember this. God never forgets His children. Even when you cannot pray, even when your voice is gone, your tears speak. Every tear that falls in faith becomes a prayer written in heaven's language. You may feel invisible, but heaven sees. You may feel unheard, but heaven listens. And to those who believe, do not wait until pain comes before you love deeply. Hold one another, pray for one another, forgive quickly. Study God's Word, because it is the lamp that keeps your path clear when the world grows dark. Don't let your hearts grow cold. The same God who comforted me in the camp is the same God who watches over you now, in every storm, in every silence, in every tear. Sometimes I sit alone under the night sky and remember the angels, the light, and the gate. I know that one day I will see that place again, not in a dream this time, but in truth. Until then, I will keep drawing, keep praying, and keep loving, because that is how heaven still speaks through me. And if you ever feel forgotten, remember this: even your smallest tear can move the heart of God.